Nabil Abdo is Senior Policy Advisor on International Financial Institutions at Oxfam International. Nabil Abdo, welcome. This policy was intended to protect social spending, but frankly, it has gone bang. It's backfired. What do you think has gone wrong?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Well, what's gone wrong is what has been wrong for a long time is that it's clear that the IMF prioritizes austerity, public spending cuts over social protection, education, over spending on social protection, education, and health. Like you mentioned, the numbers, countries are implementing more austerity measures. There is a simple reason for that, is when countries fail to meet their social spending targets, their targets on education, health, social protection, the loan will continue as normal. However, when they fail to meet their austerity targets, the loan will be suspended. So the IMF is prioritizing harmful austerity over supporting countries in building their social spending, in building their education and health, and reaching sustainable development goals. And this comes on the back of the pandemic, where the IMF has been talking about needing to build back better and the lessons learned, etc. And we see that now nothing has been learned, and we are repeating the same mistakes of the past.
Is one of the problems, or another of the problems, having spending conditions, prescriptive conditions, attached to IMF loans like this?
Yeah, there is this problem. The problem, the biggest problem is that the austerity cuts, harmful austerity, has been the default policy for the IMF in its loan programs. And this harmful austerity is about this kind of requirements and all of that. But the problem is that austerity has failed, austerity kills, austerity stunts lives, and there are alternatives. There are real alternatives to austerity that the IMF is failing to recommend countries and to ask countries to implement them, like progressive measures, progressive taxation, wealth taxes, etc. So we have a lot of alternatives, but the IMF is always turning the blind eye. And we found, we call the report social spending floors a fig leaf for austerity, is because we think that social spending, these floors are being used by the IMF in order to deflect attention away from any discussion on its austerity framework or its austerity policies. And we think countries need to have a breathing space. They need to have the decision-making in order for them to implement the policies that are best to protect their people, especially in these times of crisis and in these times where these crises for most low-income countries is imported, is not their fault. It's because of everything happening, like the war in Ukraine, the cost of living crisis, the inflation, and all of that, while countries are being asked to solve international economic issues, problems with domestic policies through making the most vulnerable pay the price.
Oxfam has talked of what it calls a lost decade of development. What is the implication for countries like Afghanistan, Bangladesh, if they do not get the international funding that they need?
Well, the consequences are dire, of course. These countries, many countries, need a lot of funding. And the IMF itself has said that over 60%, 2/3 of low-income countries are either in debt distress or close to that distress. And due to interest rate hikes in rich countries, the borrowing cost of countries the borrowing cost is increasing and sucking away vital spending for health, education, and social protection. The IMF and the international community, not only the IMF, the international community, wealthy countries, have a responsibility to support countries in terms of grants, in terms of concessional lending, in order for them to be able to support their population and not attach this kind of support with harmful austerity that really cripples countries, that depresses their growth. And even the IMF 2 days ago in their World Economic Outlook, they even admitted that for the past decade, austerity hasn't worked, yet they keep pushing on it. They keep pushing it in low-income countries and in poor countries. And this needs to stop immediately. And the IMF needs to have alternatives. The IMF needs to help countries in achieving their SDGs. They need to help countries these floors need to be an instrument for income redistribution, for wealth redistribution, and reduce inequalities. And as I said, the austerity framework
Nabil
should not
Abdo,
be the default.
we'll have to stop it there, I'm afraid. We're out of time, but good to see you, and thank you for your contribution. Nabil Abdo from Oxfam International in Washington.